What is up, family? Today, let's talk about the modern epidemic of so called truther channels that constantly fearmonger all of the time. But before we do that, let's very briefly reflect on how the Matrix works. Now, obviously, that's a very complex topic, but if we were to simplify it, we can say that the Matrix constantly tries to divide people. It tries to keep people in a perpetual state of division and conflict, right? But it also always tries to keep people in fear. And this is because fear is a lower state of consciousness. And when you keep people in fear, you get people in their fight or flight. And when you're in your fight or flight, it becomes very, very difficult to access higher states of consciousness. So this is what the Matrix does, right? It tries to divide people against each other and also divide people within themselves while simultaneously keeping people in a state of fear. This is what keeps people stuck in the illusory realm of duality. So now that we got that out of the way, let's go back to our so-called truther friends that constantly fearmonger all the time. And I'm putting truther in quotes here. And I'm doing this because do you already see the inherent contradiction here? Remember, the Matrix is constantly trying to keep people in a state of fear. But you have all of these so-called truther channels that constantly keep people in a state of fear. These channels try to expose the Matrix by doing the exact same thing that the Matrix wants them to do. They try to expose the Matrix by keeping people in the exact state of consciousness that the Matrix wants people to be in. The thing is, here's the thing. Truthers in the realist sense understand that there's absolutely nothing to be afraid of. That's because you realize that you are an eternal soul. And you realize that you're in this illusory realm, but there is a divine plan to everything. There's always a divine plan unfolding. If you were to think about in your own life, think about for a moment, I'm sure a lot of you have went through dark nights of the soul. And when you go through a dark night of the soul on your individual path, sometimes things seem very bleak and really bad, right? But then as time passes, you realize that the things that seemed bleak and bad were actually the necessary catalyst that brought you to something that was good. It was like that was needed to bring you in a certain direction. And this is all on an individual microcosmic level, right? Well, the same thing happens on a macrocosmic level when we're looking at society and culture, where there's a lot of seemingly bad things that happen, but sometimes these things are actually necessary catalysts that are bringing us in a direction that's good. Again, there's always a divine plan to everything, right? And that's what all of these so-called truther channels that fearmonger all the time always miss. They don't talk about this part of it where there's a divine plan. It's always, the focus is always on the negative, right? It's always on the evil, right? It's always on the bad, and the sky is falling, right? And I'm not saying to ignore things. I'm not saying to spiritual bypass here, but I think you understand what I'm saying. See, again, these channels are doing exactly what the Matrix wants people to do, right? This is quite ironic, right? And that's why we should follow content of people that are awake, that don't feel the need to fearmonger all the time. Because if you're in a state of fear, you can't access truth, because truth is far beyond fear, right? Fear actually keeps you from truth. And that's why it's best to seek channels and content and elevated individuals that understand all this, because they get you out of that state of fear. And when you're out of a state of fear and you're reflecting on truth, you understand that there's this divine order to everything and divine plan. then there's nothing to be afraid of, and you can truly see things as they really are. Peace.